Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome back to the Empower Her Experience. This is a place where we give space and support to heal, to grow, and to thrive. And I am your host, Christy Copeland, a licensed counselor and the founder of the Empower Her Experience. So, a couple of weeks ago, I did an episode about longing grief of infertility. And today's conversation is similar but different. It's a deeply personal and universal topic that's necessary to talk about because of the different variables that come with it. Today, we are talking about grace for the grieving. We're talking about grief and the pain that we carry and the losses that we don't speak about and the healing that's possible when we grieve with intention. And so today I'm going to be joined by a special guest. This is a powerful woman of God. She is full of wisdom and grace, but also she is a licensed professional counselor and she's a clergy woman. So she's here to help us understand what grief really is and how it shows up, and how we can cope with it and all the different variables that most people don't know. So I'm going to bring in my sis, my friend, Miss Sheila Willis. Come on in, Miss Sheila.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Miss Sheila. How are you doing this morning, sis?
I am wonderful. And you? Oh, well, let me see if I can get my volume up here. Okay, what about now? Can you hear me
Still
now?
can't hear you. We can
Oh,
see you.
I'm not sure why you can't hear me. Let me,
Still unable to hear you.
okay, one moment, please. Veronica,
Are you muted?
Veronica,
Okay, well she's working on getting hers together, but um we're gonna be talking about grief today. Y'all can hear her? I can't hear her. Can y'all hear me? Okay, they were saying, Miss Sheila, they said that they could hear you. I guess it was just me. Okay, yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me
I
now?
can hear you. I can hear you. I think it must have been on my end. I can hear you because
Okay.
there was a comment saying that they can hear you.
Oh, wow.
I guess
Good
it was something.
morning again.
I apologize. I'm still learning all this technology.
Not a problem.
But yeah, so I'm so excited to have you on this morning. I wanted you to be my guest for this episode, talking about grace for the grieving, because I know that this topic is very, very dear to you, that you have a passion for helping others who are dealing with grief. And so it's befitting that I have you here today. We were on the same platform at one point for mental health, and you gave this awesome presentation on grief, and it literally has stuck with me even since that day. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to share with some people, because there's a lot of things about grief that people don't understand.
Right. Absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to come. And yes, this is a topic that's very dear to me. Like you said, because when I lost my mom, I knew nothing about grief. So I grieved for several years. That was the unhealthy grief. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
So you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get started. So, the one thing I was saying a minute ago is that most people often associate grief with death. Okay,
Yeah.
so, but I know, and you know, that there are so many layers to grief. So, can you share with our listeners like what type of griefs exist?
Absolutely, and that's a really great place to start, Minister Copeland. A lot of people, we have different kinds of grief. We have anticipatory grief. That's the type of grief that occurs before a loss actually happens. Say, if you have a loved one who's been diagnosed with terminal cancer or some illness that's, has impending death. Um, so that's one. Another kind is acute grief. This is the immediate period of intense emotional distress that's following a loss. And I know that we'll get into the different kinds of losses in a moment, so I won't go into that. So you have anticipatory grief, you have this acute grief, and then there's normal grief. This is the grief process that involves a range of emotions, including sadness. And a lot of people don't understand it, but a lot of anger comes behind grief, and hopefully we might get into that a little bit. And even the denial stage. So there's anticipatory grief, there's acute grief, there's normal grief, and there's this disenfranchised grief that a lot of people don't really recognize or talk about. And Chrissy, this is the kind of grief that is not openly acknowledged. Say, for instance, if you have same-sex partners who lose someone, and that individual dies, and the family does not accept that type of a relationship. So that partner who lost that person that they dearly loved, they have, say, I'm about to cry now because it's really personal. They have no place to express that grief, no place to express that loss, because oftentimes, because we don't understand, they're hurting too. We don't even allow them to come to the funeral. We don't allow them to come to different places. So that's a type of disenfranchised grief, where the grief is not openly acknowledged or validated by society. And so, yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
emotional and touching for me. And the last one I want to touch on is complicated grief. That is the prolonged and severe form of grief that a lot of individuals go through. That's that intense longing for the loss of the loved one, that intense sadness, that long lasting sadness, and inability to resolve the loss. So those are the kinds: anticipatory, acute, normal, disenfranchised, and complicated grief.
Wow. And so a couple of weeks ago, that the grief that I talked about, the longing grief due to infertility, would be considered one of those disenfranchised
Yes.
of grief, because a lot of people acknowledge um, don't acknowledge the pain, or acknowledge that that's a thing, because how can you grieve something that you've never seen? It's not tangible for people, so it's something they don't acknowledge, or it's something they don't even know how to address. But what I want everyone who's watching and everyone else to know is that every form of grief is valid.
Yes.
God doesn't rank our pain; He just meets us in it. So we all, every form of grief is valid. So let's shift into like some of the symptoms of grief, because sometimes people don't even realize that what they're dealing with is grief, because grief wears so many hats. So can you give us some of the signs or symptoms of grief as well?
Absolutely. That's an excellent question also, Christy. We have the emotional symptoms, we have the psychological symptoms, and we have also the physical symptoms of grief. Some of the emotional symptoms, is that intense sadness that we just talked about.
Yeah.
The anger, a lot of people think that people are just angry, but there's something behind that anger. And a lot of times it's the loss of something or someone, whether that be a job, a relationship, a friendship, even a pet. Sometimes you'll have guilt. There's fear that's associated in that emotional symptoms. Shock and disbelief, of course, we know that's the initial shock when you lose something that's really important to you. And I went through a period of just fear. I was afraid of everything. And then, of course, again, that's that longing uh, that comes with that loss. And then there's that numbness. I talk to people every day. They're just like, I'm like, what are you feeling? Because, as a professional counselor, that it's important to be able to identify what
Right.
you're feeling. And so a lot of people just I'm just numb, Michelle. I'm just numb. And I'm going, okay, that's good. That's a good place to start. And there's also that sense of detachment that comes with that numbness. And then there's irritability. Those are the emotional symptoms. And then you have those psychological symptoms. And I love the topic, grace for the grieving, because we really do have to have grace for people who are grieving, because those psychological symptoms, we're like, yeah, something's not right here. But
Right.
people who are grieving, this, they have difficulty concentrating. And we're like, I know you heard what I just said. No, baby, I missed it. Whether you notice that I am grieving. And then there's this loss of interest in the things that we used to do. We don't, the things that we enjoyed, if we enjoyed dominoes and cards, and that just doesn't interest you anymore. If you enjoyed arts and crafts, none of that is interesting to you anymore. Also, there are changes in our appetites. These are all parts of that psychological symptoms. And Chrissy, I know you see this all the time, but a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know this, those ruminating thoughts. I mean,
Yeah.
just racing through the heads. That's all a part of the psychological symptoms. And then, as I mentioned, the physical symptoms, you're tired, fatigue, headaches, nausea, those things like that, weakness in the muscles, and heart palpitations also comes with those physical symptoms, and a lot of sleep disturbances. So those are some of the symptoms.
Yes, those are all good, and I always often let clients know, because they'll start to have all these physical pains, and like you said, the headaches and the nausea and all those things, and I always let them know that your mind and your body are connected.
Yes.
So if I tell them, if your mind is not mentally well, if you're not mentally well in your mind, it's going to manifest itself in your physical
Yeah.
body. And and so, and then I even think about how some people go, they have these mood changes, mood changes, mood swings. 1 minute, when they're grieving, they're this way, and then just couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes later, they could be a totally different way. And then some people, I know they like to deal with it by withdrawing themselves
Yes.
from other people, or some people just immerse themselves in work, thinking that that's going to, just using it as a distraction, basically.
Absolutely.
A temporary fix. But there's so many different variables to it. And thank you. And also one too that's not really talked about, because this is something, and whenever I talk about it, people kind of get uncomfortable about it. But hey, these are things that need to be talked about. One of them is spiritual. Like, there's a spiritual symptom aside to this. Like, sometimes people start to feel distant from God, and then you have those who become angry with God, but nobody wants to talk about that, because we're not
Absolutely.
be angry
Absolutely.
with God.
Yeah. And I can admit, when people say, I really opened that conversation up, because I told God, I'm embarrassed to even think of the things I said. I was angry at God, and I said, well, you could have taken this person, but you
Mhm.
took, but you took my mom, and when I started healing from my grief and going through that, I was so embarrassed. But I tell people that God is a big God. He's a
Yeah.
big boy. He can handle your anger. He can handle all of that. And you're exactly right. People don't want to say that I'm angry with God. He
Mhm.
can handle that. But you absolutely correct. We need to be able to say, God, I'm upset with you.
Yeah.
I'm really angry. He understands that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I myself, I talked about it in the longing grief video that I did. I was so angry. I was so angry because I people kept telling me all the time, well, it's God's will. It's just not God's timing. And a lot of times when someone's loved one passes away, one of the go-tos for people is, well, God knows best. Yes, we know that God knows best, but sometimes that is a trigger for some people. They don't want to hear that, because like you said, in their mind it's like, well, why did he take him? Why did he take her? This was a good person. These people over here are doing all of this, and he left them here. And so, you have those types of thoughts and comments that people don't really want to talk about. But like you said, he can handle it.
Yes.
He can
And
handle, we can't, but he can.
yeah, and Minister Copeland, I am so glad that you are breaking barriers to talk about these types of things, because say there are young girls who lost their virginity to rape, incest, and all of these things, and they're angry young women. And when you say, well, baby, God can't, they don't even like God,
Hmm.
because the representation they have of the father figure has been ruined. And so we really need to educate the Christian community about things to not say. Well, God, that's just not a good thing to say to anybody. And I think that, and I know you'll get to this part, but sometimes the best thing that we can do to support people who are grieving is just to hush
Yeah.
and just listen and give them a safe place to be angry, to be mad. And people, well, you can't be cursing in front of me. You know what I say to that, Minister Copeland? I need you to be your real self, because I don't need to minister to your avatar.
Yeah.
And so we put ourselves as ministers and professionals on these pedestals where people can't even be free to be themselves. And so then, if the language is cursing, if the language is whatever, then we fail ourselves this opportunity to be able to correct some behavior, or to give people some different guidance and give them some other language that they can use to process what they're going through. I just don't want to be a part of the group that's so good that people can't really be themselves,
I,
so that they have a safe place to grieve.
Amen. I totally agree with what you're saying. I've had that conversation so many times. Sometimes people will know of me through someone, and they know, that what I do in the ministry world and things like that. And so thank God for discernment, because when they
Yes.
come in and we're in session, I can tell that they're struggling to hold back because there's things they want to say, but they don't. And so I said, can I say something for a minute? And I always tell them, I said, I can see you're holding something back. And yes, I know that you know what I do, but you know what? This is a safe space. This is
Exactly.
a safe space, and I don't need you holding back. I need you to say whatever it is that you need to say, or whatever it is that you're feeling, because the only way that I can help you is if you do that.
Yes.
And I said, I don't want you to come here and not be able to get the most out of the reason why you came here, because you feel like you can't be your authentic self. Because if that was the case, then you should have gone to someone else where you would have felt
Yes.
comfortable doing that. I said,
Yes.
so we're not gonna do that. So
I love it.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I have that conversation so many times. And and then with like, even with the people becoming distant from God, and people becoming angry with him. You even have some that, like, guilt begins to creep in.
Yes.
Some start to feel guilty for not getting over it, or for having questions that we're afraid to ask out loud. Because guess what? Especially us in the church, because most of us were told that you don't question God. And so I have made it my mission, when I have people who come in and they talk about that, I educate people, because I let them know there is a difference between questioning God and asking God questions.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I always let them know it's based on your intent. If this is the man that has all the answers, if this is the man that holds our destiny and our purpose and our lives in his hands, and you are curious about something, why should I come to you when I can just go to him?
Exactly.
He's got the
Exactly.
keys to the mystery of me and my life and the things surrounding my life. So, yes, it's okay for me to ask him questions. It's my intent and my attitude that I go to him with that makes it different from questioning him.
Absolutely. And we've not, we're doing better, but as the body of Christ, allowing people to understand that it is okay to ask. I have a really dear friend, Elder Patricia Butler. She said, well, Willis, God has all the answers. Like you said, why would we not ask him if we really want to know? Because he has all of the answers. But what people do, because we're afraid, well, like you said, we were taught you can't question God, and you're absolutely correct. There is a difference between questioning God and asking him a question. I love that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so sometimes with that, people feel guilty.
Agree.
But grief, it doesn't operate on a schedule. So,
Mhm.
they feel guilty because I'm not getting over it. I still have all these unanswered questions, but grief doesn't operate on a schedule.
No,
Healing is not linear, it's layered.
no, exactly.
And we have to be honest enough to say, that I'm not okay. And we got to give ourselves enough grace to know that we can't rush, this process. Because people will definitely try to rush you, through
Absolutely.
your grief. And I see that a lot where people become angry because they're still dealing with grief, and people are telling them you need to just get over it, like you need to just move on, from it. And yes, life does go on, and people, it doesn't stop because we lose someone, but we can't rush anyone through their grief process, um, because again, it's a process.
It is. And as your topic says, grace, it takes grace
Yes.
because everybody's grieving process is different. Everybody doesn't grieve for the same length of time. And like you say, I explain it, it's like a roller coaster that comes back on itself. One day you're good and the next day you're not. So, yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
that guilt does come. And when you were talking about the guilt, Minister Copeland, sometimes people feel guilty for having a good day. It's okay that you have a good day and you're able to laugh and to enjoy some of the things that you did. And it's like sometimes people feel like if they had a good day, that they're doing this person that they lost a disservice. I'm forgetting. No, our loved ones really want us to live after the loss.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And there's so many. We could talk about this all day. And I'm loving this
Yeah.
conversation because we are educating some people who are feeling down and feeling bad about themselves, for grieving. And we're
Right.
also educating some people who don't understand and haven't been giving other people grace to
Yes.
grieve. And so, because grief is not, it's not a black or white
No.
thing. It exists like on a spectrum, and a person can move between different stages of grief at different times. And we have two versions of grief, which is healthy and unhealthy grieving. And these can come as depending on the support, the amount of support that someone is receiving, their coping mechanisms that they're using to grieve. And then it could be based on previous experiences, with trauma or loss that may affect whether they're grieving in a healthy way or unhealthy way. And something that most people don't understand is there's a healthy way to grieve. There's an unhealthy way to grieve. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about what healthy grief looks like, because healthy grief is, it's painful, but it moves you through the loss rather than keeping you stuck in that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that you're hurting, that you're not hurting. It means that you're processing the hurt in ways
Absolutely.
that allow healing over time. And so, can you tell our listeners and our viewers what healthy grief looks like?
Yeah, Chrissy, as you stated, grief is nothing if it's not transformative. And so the thing after the death of a family member, the path to healing and loss is, like you've already stated, is not a straight pathway. It's not linear, as you said. It's a curvy road. But ineffective grief is, if we can take the perspective that much of grief involves managing it involves managing our reactions to the loss. And you can see that effective grieving that leads to the proper healing process is a matter of learning how to better manage your emotional selves. And that's really what it is. Learning how to deal with the anger that you're experiencing from the loss, learning how to deal with the guilt in a way that is healthy and as opposed to unhealthy. And so the all of those, it's a matter of dealing with all of the emotions that come with the loss, learning how to manage those ways in a way that's healthy and not like anger that comes in outbursts. There's coping mechanisms that you can use for the anger. There's strategies that you can use for the guilt. There's strategies that you can use for the even the longing and the loss. But it's being able to manage our emotions in a healthy way.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine one day, and I let them know that even though a person is grieving and they feel all types of emotions, it still does not give them a pass to use other people as their emotional punching bag.
Exactly.
And that, because that's an unhealthy way, of grieving. You have to allow yourself the emotional expression to be able to cry, to feel sad, to feel angry, and sometimes even relieved. We can't suppress our emotions, even though we don't always express them publicly. We still have to have emotional expression. That's a healthy way of grieving. And a lot of times people say, well, I don't want to cry. It's healthy to cry. It's okay to cry.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's okay to do that. And I think, again, that plays into some of the things that, some of us were taught, is that crying is for the weak. You don't we only weak people cry.
Right.
Stop crying. And oh my goodness, I have to say this. One of the things that makes my socks roll up and down is when I hear somebody say, don't y'all be at this funeral crying, or y'all need to quit all of that crying. Leave those people alone.
Absolutely. And I just say, I said, and I've become really bold in saying, that's really an unhealthy thing to say to people who have lost somebody that's so important, and I said, God gave us crying as a relief valve. And I said, for you to deny these people the ability to relieve that pressure by crying, I said, that's an injustice to them. And I just say it, Minister Copeland, because somebody has to say it. It might as well be me. When you get this old, you can really say what you want to say.
Look, I can say what I want to, because I just got to the point to where I'm like, we got to stop keeping people in bondage and
Yeah.
making them feel bad for being a human being.
Yes. And why would God give us tears?
Thank you.
Why would he give those to us? There's a reason for that. And God don't put no more on you than you can bear. We get all of that. But right now, this is just a heavy load, and I'm not bearing it well at all. Can you just be my brother's keeper? Can you just help me bear one another up? When one is weak, we don't want to talk about those things, because what we really want to do, Christy, is we want people to hurry up and get better, so we don't have the obligation of having grace for people to heal and to process their grief. Because sometimes, honey, if you grieve too long, people will let your hand go.
Yes. And then
Right.
another reason they want people to hurry up, because the expression of emotion and the grief is uncomfortable for them.
Absolutely. And they don't, and it's okay to say, I don't know how you feel. I don't know what to say, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm present. If you want to talk, talk. If you don't want to say anything, I'm just going to be in the moment with you. Get a book and read, and
Yeah.
just let them have that moment. It's okay to be silent, because sometimes silence is really the best key.
Yes, yes.
Right.
I was having a conversation with someone else, because I often have conversations about grief, because there's so many people out there who are grieving. And someone mentioned to me one day that, well, I didn't know they cried, but I didn't know what to do. I said, you being there was enough.
Yes.
I said, so many times we think that we gotta say something. And I said, generally, because we really don't know what to say, what we say is us putting our foot in our mouth, when really just sitting in the room with them, just
Yes.
giving them a squeeze on their hand, or just giving them a hug, or just a little smile, or asking, can I get you anything? Can I get you something to drink? Can I cook you something to eat or get that's enough.
It
You
is.
know, people when people are dealing with great losses, like for the woman who's been married for 30, 40, 50 years and her spouse is gone, or for siblings who were really close and one of them leaves, or for a parent who's lost their child. The last thing that someone wants is being having scriptures hurled at them, or all of these just the thing to say, all of the things that's the last thing that people want. You
Exactly.
can sit there and silently pray for them. You can sit there and ask God to comfort their heart, and help them and give them peace through this process. And then when they're to a place where they're able to really receive that, you
Yeah,
know, give them space to be able to ask for that, and to seek support, because one of the things that goes with healthy grieving is seeking support, where
absolutely.
you reach out to others and you let them know, that I'm not okay, that I need help. You go to your friends or you go to your family, or even support groups. So people who have a common, commonality with you, with the grief, and even in therapy. And so, that's one of the healthy things to do when it comes to grieving, and also to understand that with this healthy grief, that you're gonna have fluctuating emotions. Some days are gonna feel harder than others.
Yes,
You may have moments of laughter, even in the midst of pain, and that's normal and that's healthy. But I think I heard you mention this earlier, but I see that so many people, even after they've lost and they're hurting, there's something may happen that make them laugh, and in the middle of their laugh, they realize I'm laughing, and so they stop laughing and they retreat and go back into their little shell because they feel guilty for laughing.
absolutely. And in my sessions, I encourage my clients to have fun.
Yes.
I really do. And there's a book, I don't know if you read it or not. It's about Andrea Watcher. And what she has in that book, Christy, it's how to reveal and heal what you feel. And I thought about that when you were talking. And one of the things that she talks about, there's two things that we really need to do. We need to learn to let our emotions out effectively and constructively. And I thought about that while you were speaking. And especially when you said we try to find a good support system, people who will allow us to be our genuine selves in that moment. We try to find safe people and places and ways where we can share our feelings, where we're not going to be judged, where we're not going to be made to stuff our feelings in. And so we have to seek healthy outlets to do that. And the other thing she says is that we need to replace a negative thought or emotion with a positive one. And sometimes that's difficult to do. And
Right.
another thing that I gleaned while you were talking, when I show up to a grieving person, I let them know what I have to offer. I said, hey, listen, I'm here to support you. If you want me to pray, I can pray. If you
Right.
want me to read a scripture, I can do a scripture. If you
Yes.
want me to hug you, I can hug you. I can hold whatever you need me to do. I'm just going to sit here and you can just, this is the list of things that I can do. If you need me to run errands, I can do that. So I pretty much give them a list, but I don't just come in and, oh, Heavenly Father, and
Yes.
sometimes because that's what we do,
Yes.
sometimes people are just not ready for the prayer for obvious reasons, like we've already mentioned before. Sometimes they just need to sit in the moment. So I just show up and I give a hug and I whisper in the ear and I said, hey, I'm here to do whatever you need me to do.
Yes.
I'll be
That
right over here in the corner until you tell me what you need me to do.
yes.
And so,
Because
yeah,
because the best way to help someone is to find out what it is they need.
absolutely.
We want to give people what we think they need or what they
Yeah,
should have, but
yeah.
sometimes they don't need what it is that we're trying to give.
At
You know,
that moment, yeah, at that moment, they don't need that. Yeah,
that moment, that is not what they need. And so thank you. I'm so glad that we said that. I love this conversation. I really do. And we're still talking about healthy grief, and one of the things about healthy grief is acceptance over time.
yes,
You gradually accept, even though you don't like it, you gradually accept the reality of the loss, even though it still hurts. even if it's
Yes.
hurts, you accept it. Acceptance does not mean that you forget. Um,
Right.
acceptance doesn't mean that that you were okay with what happened. It just means that you've accepted the reality of the loss. and
Yeah.
and there's so many things that um people don't know is that you can honor the loss, like find ways to honor the person, or the situation, through memories or rituals or continuing legacy. Like I see people, they have like hospital buildings named after them, or gyms, high school gyms, or college gyms, or some people do scholarships and for other people in the name of the person. But you can do ways to honor that
Yeah.
person. That's a form of healthy grief.
It is. And to mention that, and some people, maybe you can't afford to do a big monument like you
Right.
list. I see people who have the memorials on the windows of their cars.
Right.
And I just think that is so absolutely wonderful. And every time I see those on the back of cars, I pray for the individual that's in the car. And when you were talking about being able to accept the loss, that comes after the shock and the
Yes.
denial and all of those things. And it's more, Minister Copeland, than just this intellectual acceptance. It's also the emotional recognition. And so that intellectual acceptance, it occurs as a person emerges from that shock and denial of the loss.
Yes.
And it may take longer
I pray for
for some people to get there because, like we've been saying the whole time, the grieving process is the key word, is different for everyone. And another key that you're just dropping so many nuggets that remind me when you were talking, another healthy way is you have to allow yourself to feel the whole weight of the grief. A lot of people, when they start feeling that longing and that heaviness and that and that can't breathe and panic attacks that come with it, sometimes they stop and they just start stuffing. But in order to be able to process the grief and go through it, you have got to get yourself to the place where you can feel the full weight of the loss. And if you don't do that, feeling that it's uncomfortable, but until you get to that point, and I knew that I got to the full weight of the loss is when I just one day I just screamed to the top of my voice, just why, and it just went this long why. And after I did that, it was just like the healing began.
Yes.
But you have to be able to feel the full weight of that loss. And experiencing that feeling is imperative and is a primary task between one of the things that I talked about when I was did the video for Minister Prophetess Copeland is that disorganization. That's when you're going through all of these ruminating thoughts and nothing is coherent. You just got all these. That's a part of that disorganization phase is when you are allowing yourself to feel the full weight of that loss. And when you begin to reorganize and things are coming together, that's when you learn to adjust to the loss and you begin to learn to ways to live your life without that person or without that thing that you've lost. And that's when you begin to start moving forward. But those are some of the things that are healthy grieving.
Yes, because it's because sometimes the person is still here and people don't know that you can grieve someone who's here.
Absolutely.
Like you were talking about that anticipatory grief,
Yes.
and even like with divorces or breakups and things like that. A lot of
Mhm.
times the person is still here, or the situation would have been a situation of I've seen people grieving from retirees. Like, they've been on their jobs for 30 or 40 years and they
Mhm.
leave that job, and that job had become their identity. So when they leave the job, they don't know what to do with themselves. And so they go through all of these different wave of emotions and they don't understand what's happening. And I let them know you're grieving. You're
Yeah.
grieving because what you've known for 30, 40 years, or that relationship that you were in for 10, 15 years that ended, there's a grieving process to that because that was a part of you. And
And
now
you know,
it's
yeah,
no.
and Minister Copeland, that brings up a really interesting point. And what people don't understand when you lose that job or leave that job, it's not just the job, it's all of the relationships
Right.
that you had that were with the job, your coworkers, the vendors that you were acquainted with, and so a lot of people don't understand that with one loss, there are so many other losses. Say, for instance, in a divorce, you not only lose that spouse, you lose the income,
Yes.
you lose some of the friends that were attached to that. So there's a lot of different losses that come with that one loss.
Yes, and the loss of the life, you
Yeah,
know, that you had, and longing for that life that you had, or longing for or the grief of what you wanted, your
yeah,
expectation of this is what I had in mind for us, and we were going to do
yeah,
this, and we were going to travel the world, and we were going to do this, and we're going to do that, and not having that, grieving what you were expecting, or what you were looking for, or what you were longing for. And so,
absolutely,
and we're talking about healthy grief, um,
absolutely.
and so even with healthy grief, like, you begin to reinvest in life again.
Yes.
You find a way to start, setting goals again, and you start to experience moments of joy, without feeling guilty, when you're in that process of healthy grief, as well.
And I think that one of the main things that I really stress in my sessions is that you have to acknowledge it did happen.
Yes.
No matter what you feel or how you feel, you have to own the fact that it did happen. And
Yes.
I think that when you can get your clients to see, or anyone that you're supporting in their grief process, you know, at some point you have to own it did happen. I
Yes.
can't change the fact that it did happen. It happened. All of my dreams with this might not be possible, but I can certainly start again,
Yes.
and the dreams maybe not are lost. You can still have those dreams, maybe not with that person, maybe not in that way, but you didn't lose all some of those expectations, so yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good segue into this next part that we're going to talk about, is the unhealthy grief. And this is when, someone becomes stuck in the grieving process, and it doesn't evolve or ease over time. They might it may begin to interfere with their daily life, their daily function. And you were just saying, one of the things that we have to do is acknowledge the loss. But in during unhealthy grief, this is where there's a persistent denial and disbelief, refusing to acknowledge the loss way long after it occurs. And I've seen this as well. So, what are your thoughts on the disbelief and refusing to acknowledge the loss?
And people get there, and so if we take the perspective that much of grief involves managing our emotional reactions, like we talked about, to the loss, we can see that effective grieving leading to healing after loss is a matter of learning again how to better manage our emotional selves whenever we're faced with a devastating loss. So ineffective grieving or unhealthy grieving, then it occurs when our emotions run wild. They
Yes.
just are just all over the place. We make rational
Yeah,
thought
right.
difficult.
Yep.
Nothing I say can change it. And so we find ourselves in such and so, well, how would you feel if you thought about it this way? Some people just refuse to think of anything uh, differently than what you are presenting to them. And what I say to that is that I have to allow that individual to still process, as unhealthy as it is. But if I'm going to have grace for this client, I have to understand that this process is going to be longer than expected, because at some point, I look at it like this. Everything has an expiration date,
Yes.
right? And so that unhealthy thinking process has an expiration date. And I will, just to be totally transparent, I when I encounter these situations, I'm praying like, hey God, this is your person. I'm
Hmm.
sitting there patiently letting them do that. And you are the guy, you are the creator,
Right.
and you can give me something beyond my years of experience. You can give me knowledge that's beyond my educational knowledge to connect with this person in a way that would help them process this grief. Because sometimes we as therapists have to realize, hey, this one is a tough one. We didn't learn this one. We didn't, we didn't. And so only God, can give us the answer to those. And so those emotions like anger and sadness and fear and insecurity and guilt and loneliness, sometimes people can get just stuck there.
Yes.
And sometimes we just have to like allow them to process that, because at some point, I had a client to say, I've been here long enough. It's time for me to move on. And you know what I said? Girl, I'm moving with you.
Moving with you.
Let's go. Let's go. I've been waiting for you.
Yes,
But
and
yeah,
I'm right there with you. I find myself often. I take God into my sessions with me often.
yeah,
And well, I say often every day. I really do every day. Because and I'm always saying within when they're talking, I'm saying within myself, God help me to help them.
yes,
Help me
yes.
to help them because you know how to get through to them. I don't. I've exhausted, like you said, I've exhausted everything I know how to do, and they are refusing to see anything other than what they're seeing. And I get that,
Mhm.
that's a part of it. And one of the things that I say to a lot of people is when they are heavily grieving or and it's fresh and things, I always say, I would wait. I said, you might want to wait like a year or so before you make any major
Yeah.
decisions, because like you said, with people make irrational decisions when
Mhm.
they're grieving or when they're hurting, even not just with loss, but even just with like, or not just with death, but even with like loss, like right after they get out of a nasty relationship or things like that. But people make these irrational decisions, and then afterwards when they snap out of it, it's like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? I,
Exactly.
why did I do this? Well, it was because they were making a decision out of their pain.
Mhm.
And so but another sign of unhealthy grief that I wanted to talk about is avoidance. And we
Yeah.
kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, which is this is numbing and distracting
Mhm.
through like alcohol or drugs, or
Yes.
like I said, overworking, the constant busyness to avoid dealing with the pain. So many other things, risky behavior, and
Yes.
things like that. And then isolating from loved ones and avoiding those things, as you said earlier, that once brought them joy.
Mhm. Yeah, and so, and what I tell clients, one of the most devastating things you can do for yourself when you are grieving any type of loss is to isolate
Ooh,
and to medicate. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not going to make the pain go away. What it actually does is what you just said. It makes you numb,
mhm.
and numbing the emotion is not going to help you heal from the pain of it. So again, it goes back to being able to afford yourself the opportunity without alcohol abuse or risky behavior. I'll say it that way. Doing things to that are kind of
Yeah,
productive to your healing process.
yeah,
The thing that I encourage grievers to do, you need to sit with yourself, with someone that you trust who can just be in the moment with you. But isolating doesn't help, because those ruminating thoughts lead back to what you just stated. Well, what if I just go and, and you start making decisions based on feelings and not facts,
yes, yes,
right? And so you have to wait until you are in a place to where you have resolved and learn how to manage and own those emotions. One of the first things I do with the grieving client is I give them that. I know you know that 50 or 60 emotion chart. I just need you to tell me what you feel, because a lot of people are not able to explain what they're feeling. But if you show them a picture of, oh yeah, yeah, I feel all of this. And I'll say something like, now you see why it's imperative that we don't make any major life changing decisions while we are in this place,
yes,
right? And let's try not to numb. And I try to get individuals to deal with one thing at a time,
Yeah.
the irrational thoughts that comes with the numbing, of course, that
Right.
and so we have to start unpacking those things. And my the main thing that I try to do is, this really true? Let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Is that really true?
Mhm.
Because that's where the healing, I'm learning that the healing is going to become, because these thoughts that they're thinking
Yeah.
are just not true.
They're not true. And I always ask them, is this based on fact or is this based on an opinion or how you're feeling about this situation? And most of the time, 98% of the time, 99% of the time,
Yes,
sometimes it's 100% of it, the answer is no, this is not based on facts. And then I said, okay, well, then that's a thought that we need to put in the emotional dumpster.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah. And I'll say, so what we're going to deal with in this session is truth.
yes,
Well, let's just deal with the truth, because sometimes that truth we avoid, like you were saying in the unhealthy, we avoid truth because sometimes that truth is so hard to accept.
right,
And, I'll say, you might not want to accept it right now, but, we have to operate in truth, and not and that's part of feeling the full weight of the feelings. Yeah.
right. And okay, and something else that I really really want to talk about with the
Mhm.
unhealthy grief is the intense feeling of guilt or shame. And this is through with death, this is with divorce, relationships ending, um, where the person feels overly responsible for the loss. Constantly thinking, I should have done more. If I had been a better wife, maybe they wouldn't have left. If I had have just gotten them to the hospital a moment sooner, then they wouldn't have died. Or if I had just taken better care of them, then they would still, be here. Feeling overly responsible for the loss. Maybe sometimes you have people who have maybe something happened in their midst where the person, let's say they passed out or they fainted and they're trying to do CPR, but yet the person still passes away. Well, maybe I didn't do the CPR right, or I didn't do enough, but they're feeling overly responsible for the loss, and it's so hard for them to let go of it because they feel like I should have done more. I could have done more. I could have stopped this. If I'd have just did this, then I could have stopped this. And one of my questions to them is always, so you think you have that kind of power? You know me.
Absolutely. And and what I say to my clients, this is what trauma does to our brain,
Yes,
right? When we experience a traumatic loss like that, and the best way that I can explain it to clients, and I do it all the time, it's like our brain has taken a hit. And so, because the brain has taken a hit, it's trying to make sense of the loss. So, what the brain is doing, I woulda, shoulda, coulda, would, and you just have all of these ruminating thoughts. And that's a part of the process. And, I just simply say, I said, hey, I get it. You're processing. And
right.
I said, it's okay to process, but let's just go ahead and unpack it. And let's just see if this is a feeling or a fact.
Mm, mm,
One client, I emphatically said, that was feeling responsible for the death of a parent. I just simply said, this was a God thing because I'm not this smart, Minister Copeland. I was like, I said, so I have a question. I said, did you do everything you could for your mom?
right.
And I said, it's just a question. And she said, I did.
Mhm,
And I said, was there anything else that you could have done in your power? Nothing.
mhm,
And so then I said, then I need you to say something for me.
mhm.
I need you to say, I did everything I knew to do for my mother.
Yes.
And I say baby because I'm an old woman and I call all you young ladies baby. I was said, and she couldn't say it.
Yeah.
And I said, I need you to say it out loud. Now this was God, because again, I'm not this smart.
Yes.
And when that baby said it, I mean, that was the moment that she felt the full weight of her loss,
Yes.
because she really realized in that moment, now I'm about to cry, that she did everything she could.
Yes.
for her mom, but because she had all of these emotions, her brain was trying to make sense. I should have done this, I should have done that, and I should have did all of that. We had gone through all of those things, and we had shown that, hey, check, 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 check. And it
Mhm.
was in that moment that, and sadly enough, we had probably about two more sessions after that, and then she was good.
Yeah.
So the thing of it is just being able to we know that the brain, like you said, I should have done. That's the brain
Right.
literally trying to make sense of
Sense.
this loss.
Yes.
And so we internalize all of that
Yeah.
because it's the brain's way of trying to make sense of it. But
Right.
once we process all of that stuff and we come to the realization that, no, yeah, I did everything that I knew to do.
Right.
This is
Right.
what I need to do. Yeah. And then we can release ourselves. But
Yeah.
that is the sad part of the counseling session.
Yeah. And then, I even see this as well. Like, this is definitely something that I see commonly with like spouses, um, where one spouse is ill, the other one's caretaking, but both of them have health issues, or even in just families in general. You have a family member caretaking, or someone caretaking,
Mhm.
and there's these times where they deal with their own emotions that come with compassion fatigue and caretaking,
Yes.
to where they go through these bouts of being tired, and go through these bouts of being frustrated, in the process, or the fatigue that they experience, and sometimes really irritable, because they are trying to take care of this person, but then they're also dealing with things as well. Because even we know, even with caregiving, like, bills still have to be paid. Somebody has to work, and
Yeah.
things have to be done, and errands and things have to be done, and all these things. And so you're trying to manage all of these things while still caregiving. And so, and then if something happens and the person passes away, now they carry this enormous amount of guilt, because they think about those feelings that they had when the person was here. And it's like, I would give anything to have those feelings if that person were back, that bargaining stage. But one of the things that I always say to them is, think about everything that it takes just to take care of you, just
Yeah.
for you to get out of bed, just for you to put one foot before the other, just for you to deal with life and everything that comes with it, and your responsibilities, and getting yourself together to take care of another individual who
Absolutely.
relies heavily on you. I always let them know, your body is going to respond to whatever is going on mentally.
Yes.
So if you are experiencing fatigue, this is what I always ask them. I said, what happens when you've gone hours and hours with no food? They always say, you get hangry. I said, what happens when you've gone days and days, or or you didn't get any sleep, for a day or two, you got very little rest. What happens? I'm tired. I'm cranky. I said, that is a natural human response.
Absolutely.
You are beating yourself up because the person is no longer here, and you felt those emotions while they were here taking care of them. That's a human response.
Mhm.
Those are things that are going to happen, because it takes a lot just for us to take care of us, and then you add a whole nother individual to that. Not that we don't want to take care of them. I said, did you not want to take care of them? They said, no, I just was tired.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that we don't do a good job when we're healthy is talk about end of life.
Mhm.
My kids know right now, I do not need you handling me if I become incapacitated. This is what I need to happen. This helps to alleviate their guilt of saying, oh my God, I put my mom in the nursing home, or I did this. And one thing that I encourage individuals who have not prepared for end of life, or when a loved one becomes incapacitated, you have to be able to be honest with yourself about your capabilities.
Yes.
Okay. If you do not have the capacity, emotional, physically, or psychologically, to care for a loved one who has a lot of health challenges, you need to be honest with yourself, because society, Minister Copeland, has put this burden on us. Oh, I can't believe they put their mom in the nursing home, or I
Yeah.
can't believe she took her husband to. And I am an advocate for respite care. This is where, you allow your loved one to go for a couple of weeks to a facility where they are responsible for taking care of that woman, that person, while you have a break to just breathe.
Yeah.
Because caring for someone who is near an end of life, it's a big responsibility,
Right.
and we need to be honest about where we are with being having the capacity to care for someone in that regard. Uh, that way, that takes away a lot of the guilt that we would feel if that person passes on. And so I just believe in being proactive.
Yes.
My kids go, why are you talking to us about this? Because baby, it's gonna happen one day. And if I go first, I don't need my kids to be burdened with the norms and what society is saying about them. I need them to be able to say, this is what my mom wanted, and this is what we're gonna fulfill her wishes. So I really believe in that aspect of it as well.
I'm so glad you said that, because so many times we hear that,
Mhm.
and those comments are made, but a lot of people don't realize is we are doing ourselves and the person a disservice when we're struggling to try to take care of them, when we know that it's too much for us, it's too big for us, and that we need help. Why not get help? The best thing that you can do is to get help.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you abandon the person. It doesn't mean that you don't love the person, because you can still be there to support them, but also getting the help, because you have some people with the lifting and the things, all those things wear and tear on your body, and wear you down and get you to the point to where you can barely take care of them, because you can't really take care of yourself. But yet, we have so many people, like you said, trying to live up to what society says, and so
Mhm.
they continue in that way. And so I'm so glad. I know we are going long, but hey, this is a good. People need to know these things. And one thing I want to, before we leave the unhealthy grief, and really tell people how they can deal with grief, but is the ones who say that their life doesn't have any meaning, that that happiness is no longer possible, that because the person is gone or the person died, that their quality of life died, their meaning for life died, and they don't believe that life is worth living because the person's not here. I want to
Yeah,
talk about.
yeah. The thing that I say to that, especially when I'm dealing with clients who are Christians, the first thing that I want them to know is that love never dies. And if
Right.
we believe the word of God, like we say we believe it, our loved one transitioned. So the flesh has dissolved. That's what left, but the spirit moves on. And a person only dies if you allow them to die, the memories to die. And so I try to encourage them to uh, to do the things that you've already spoken about, to make that person's legacy live on. One of the things that I like to encourage people to do, like with my family, each person has a couple of candles, one for mom, one for dad, you know, and so that all of my nieces and nephews can understand that, this is a part of your grandmother that you didn't know, or your grandfather. And so we, as the children, we have to say one thing that mom said that was life changing, that was full of wisdom, that has helped us to advance in life. And then we have to say something that's really funny that she said that made us laugh. So then our nieces and nephews, oh my God, I didn't know grandma was comical like that. And then we have to do the same thing for my dad, because my dad was really funny, like really, really funny and really wise. So then what you do is you continue that legacy, and the Bible speaks about that. Uh, we're only we only forget our loved ones if we allow their memories to die. And I love what you said about starting scholarship funds in their memory, or having a billboard in their memory or putting something on the back of a car in their memory so that you don't forget that individual. And this is the thing that I talk to my friends all the time about my mom. I was at a family gathering this weekend, and I have this dear friend that my mom used to say, "Now you're my cousin," and I talk about my mom as if she was present in the room, because and so those are the types of things you don't like. Oh my gosh, she's dead. But no, my mother's legacy is going to live on because I'm going to talk about her every chance I get. Every chance I get to talk about my dad, I'm going to talk about him. So those are the kinds of things that I think is absolutely healthy for you to do. Don't, because the spirit, as we believe as Christians, the spirit still lives.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people are afraid to even speak of the person
Yeah.
who died. They don't want to say anything around other family members. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to mention, their name, or they don't want to talk about them. And I always let them know that's healthy. Uh,
Yeah.
that's healthy. It's okay to talk about them. It's okay to laugh about some of the things, that they said, or that they did. I lost an uncle in 2021, and it was really hard, for our family. Still really hard, for our family. And I think about him often. And one of the things that I think about is, a couple of weeks before he passed, I had just gotten a new car. And I didn't know that he wasn't supposed to be driving. And so he's asking me about this new car and everything. And he was like, well, can I go and take it for a drive? And I was like, sure, let me get the keys. And when I got ready to give him the keys, my aunt and his daughters was like, he can't drive. I said, oh my gosh, you almost got me in trouble. Because, and I think about that and I laugh about that, because I remember it was like it was yesterday, and how I was really ready to give him the keys and say, here you go, go take it for a drive. And so, and those things, and I just sit and I just laugh, and that helps me.
Yes.
So talking about them is healthy. So I'm glad you said that. And
In
what
fact, the gathering, the family gathering that I went to, it was a gathering, the Benny and Christine Holland family gathering, and they're deceased, and their children have this awesome, my cousins, they have this big family gathering, and we do the things that they enjoy doing,
yeah,
playing dominoes and cards and just enjoying family. And it was so healing for me because during this time, you get to see people that your loved ones care dearly for, and you get to share memories about, hey, do you remember when mama did this? Or do you remember when daddy said this? Those things are so imperative. And so, yeah, we often just, Chrissy, we remember the doom of the funeral and the doom of this. No, let's remember life.
let's focus on the good things that
Yes.
brought, because so often you'll hear people say, well, that's what they like to do, so I'm not doing that, or that's where they wanted to go, so I'm not going there. And I
Mhm.
always let them know, that's a way for you to feel close to them.
Yes.
This same uncle, that I was talking about, he absolutely loved my cheesecake. When I tell you, he told me one day I make the best cheesecake on this side of heaven.
Oh,
And so he
cheesecake.
loved my cheesecake. And then when he passed away, it was in September. And so, Thanksgiving was coming up, and every holiday he was looking for this cheesecake. And so for Thanksgiving, when they were making out the list of what they wanted everybody to bring, I was still very much grieving, heavily. And I said, don't even think about asking me to make this cheesecake, because I'm not gonna do it. And in my mind, I was like, I'm never making that again. And then but after I thought about it, the closer it got to Christmas, I said, you know what? I'm gonna make this cheesecake, even if I cry the whole time that I'm doing it.
Right.
And so I went to the pantry one day and looked to see what all I had, and I stood there in the doorway just burst into tears, standing in the pantry doorway. And I just shut the door and walked away. But then a couple of days later, I said, you know what? And I'm looking at this all wrong. if I look at this as a way, he want me to make this cheesecake.
Yes.
I'm gonna make this cheesecake. And so I said, I'm gonna do it. And so I went and I got the ingredients out of the pantry. And then the whole time I'm stirring and putting these in, tears is just rolling down my face. But you know what?
Wow.
I said, I'm gonna make this cheesecake.
Yes.
Make you this cheesecake. And so I made the cheesecake and I felt so good. I felt so close to him when after I made it. I cut a
Mm.
slice and put it on a plate across from me.
Wow.
And I could hear him just smacking and eating the cheesecake, and everything. And so I felt so close to him in that moment. And I was like, God, I thank you for giving me the strength to do that because it
Yes.
made me really have a moment with him. I felt his presence. It seemed like I could feel him right there in the room with me. And so,
Yeah.
the things I always tell people, the things that we shy away from and don't want to do, because that it was associated with that person, are the very things that will probably help us to heal,
Yes.
will likely help us to heal. And so now when I make it, I can make it and not cry. But I think about them, but I can make it and not cry. But even if I do, it's okay too.
It
Um,
is.
but I just make it, and I'm making it from a place of love because I know this is what he likes. So thank you for sharing that.
And I love that, Chrissy, because that's another one of those avoidance tactics that you spoke of earlier. We avoid those things that that would really be healthy for us to feel the full weight of the grief. And I think that I love the fact that you made yourself do it. It was a process to get there, but that closeness, and I'm going to say this and we'll be done with that. But the thing of it is that what looks crazy to other people, we don't do it because it might look crazy to other people. So I'm to the point of where, honey, it can look crazy to you, but it makes sense to me.
Makes
I'm
sense.
just grieving like I want to grieve right
I
here.
gotta get my healing. I gotta get my healing. And so
Yes.
yes, and so what I want people to know is that grief can change you, but it
Yes.
doesn't have to destroy you.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah,
I
it
love that.
doesn't have to destroy you. The key is just understanding that change is going to happen, but we can allow grief to shape us, but it doesn't have to shatter us. You know,
I like that.
because some of the things that we can actually get from grief and knowing that it's not all negative is we can learn to have compassion for other people. It deepens our compassion for other people, and it helps us to realize that we do have a purpose, and help us to see what's really important in life. Sometimes those are some of the benefits that come with it. It can inspire you to a calling, starting a support group or something to
Yes.
help someone else, to help other people heal. When you've gone through grief and you've come on the other side and you're in that healthy stage, being able to help someone else get to that point as well. So it's not all bad. It is just, it's your perspective and how you choose to allow the grief to shape you,
Right.
the situation. And so I love this conversation. We probably need to have a grief part two. But
Amen.
but before we end this, I want to talk about we talked a little bit about it, but I kind of want to just drive it home before we do. And this is some other ways to cope with grief. Journaling your
Yes.
feelings and journaling your emotions, allowing yourself to feel, acknowledging the grief, and creating space, for healing. Going to counseling if you need it. You can have Jesus and a therapist too. Okay, I can't say that enough. Look at me, people. You can have Jesus and a therapist too. And we have an amazing therapist online. Y'all hit her up. Let her give you her information when we're wrapping this up. But having a therapist, praying and meditating and walking. Walking is great. That's one of my go.
Yes.
I love to walk. That is my time to just talk and to kind of just get myself centered and focused. And then sometimes just simply resting, just resting. But don't minimize, the grief. Just rest. One of the other things is surrounding yourself with people who don't need you to be strong all the time.
Mm-mm.
People who can let you um not put that cape on you. Like I say, we have people, we just allow them to put that cape and we wear that cape proudly. But surround yourself with people who don't need you to be strong all the time.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I would just like to say this, and it's a really touchy topic. Sometimes I have people who enter into extremely complicated grief.
Mm,
And uh, I think that when we assess those clients, it's okay to get some medication
yeah.
to
Thank
help you through that process. A lot of people, well, it's okay to get medication to help those ruminating thoughts because I thought about that when you were talking about the rest. And well, Miss Sheila, I try to rest, but the thoughts won't stop. The thoughts won't stop. I can't stop the thoughts. I can't stop. And you cannot have a healthy counseling session if I'm sitting here and when I say one word, you're just racing. Your thoughts are constantly racing.
you. Oh, that's good.
You know, it's okay to get some temporary medication for your grief. Your family practitioner you don't have to go to that doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you are grieving. And so
Right.
it's okay to get medication. And the one thing, Chrissy, that we didn't talk about, I really want to say this when we're supporting people who are grieving.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good deal. Yeah. So it's okay. Like she said, the journal and all of those things. Okay. And that's the only thing I wanted to add. It's okay to get some medication. It
Yes.
really is.
Thank you.
I
Thank you
wish
for
I
saying.
had known that when I was grieving, it would have saved me some years of
Mhm.
complication. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm telling you, I am not. I tell people I'm not a pill pusher, but I understand
Mhm.
sometimes we need it.
Yes.
Sometimes we need it, and I am not ashamed to say I have had to for 3 years. I battled with insomnia,
Mhm.
and it was triggered, and so I had to take medication for insomnia. And I said I wasn't ashamed. I said, you know what, I'm gonna take this until you tell me to stop. you know
Exactly.
and thank God that actually some about 6 months ago, God said, okay, it's time to stop. And I have no trouble sleeping. I have no trouble sleeping. And so, but I say that it is okay. Like you said, it's
Yeah.
okay. If
Mhm.
someone needs to get it, I always tell them you don't have to take it forever. Doesn't mean you're gonna be on it forever, because some of the
Mhm.
concern is, well, I don't want to take medicine always. I don't want to become dependent on it. You don't have to.
Exactly.
So this is just to help you get through this rough time. And
Exactly.
and just knowing that you don't have to just be strong and try to do this all on your own, because sometimes your strength is in your surrender. It's okay to
Yes.
it's okay to fall apart. Why? Because we serve a God who knows how to put us back together. We serve a God who knows how to hold those broken pieces. And so we're not alone. And we want people to know, who are watching, who are grieving, and that your tears, their tears are okay, and that your silence is heard, and that you don't have to rush to be okay. Let the grief do what it came to do, not to destroy you, but let it shape you. you know
Absolutely.
God's not afraid of our sorrow. God is not afraid of our pain. He's sitting right in it with us,
Absolutely.
and so I just want people to know that. But now, for what you were talking about, this is what we were going to end the session with, is ways to support the grieving without losing yourself in the process, because it can be a lot. I even know, as a therapist, just professionally, when dealing with clients, like you said, who are in complicated grief, and doing unhealthy, grieving, and the process is taking a long time, it can take its toll.
It
um,
can.
and so let's talk about some ways that people can support someone who's grieving without losing themselves.
Yeah, some of the simple things we really make it more complicated than what it really is. We've talked about just being present and listen. Just be present. And sometimes I offer practical help.
Yes.
I'll just go in and start cleaning bathrooms. I'll wash dishes. Those things that a griever just does not have the mental or physical capacity to do. There are some things that we can do that just will help. If people are bringing things to the home, I go and organize and put those things in a place to where the griever can find just simple things like that. And then one of the things that, we need to validate that person's feeling.
Right.
And you've said that the whole time you've been talking. It's okay not to be okay.
Yes.
I don't need you to be strong for me. It's supposed to hurt. I would hate to pass away and my kids didn't cry. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know, when you lose someone or something that you value, it's supposed to hurt. It's
Right.
supposed to evoke some emotions in you. Acknowledge the grief and let them know that it's okay to feel sad. It's okay. I don't feel like taking a bath. Now, that's one of the things that we have to get used to. People who are grieving, y'all, sometimes they don't want to take a shower. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? They really don't. So, you know, but that's one of the things that we have to really be patient with.
Yes.
And this is the one that you mentioned early in the session, early in the podcast. Avoid unsolicited advice.
Ooh,
Just please do. Just
be quiet.
if I didn't ask, please, you know, I'm just like, my whole body rolls, not just my eyes. My whole body just like, I can't believe they said that.
My socks roll up and down.
My body, well, your socks do what my whole body does. And
Yes,
people that can read me, your face is not saved. I'm going like, yeah, I know, but
I know.
did you hear that? And so with that leads into we really have to be mindful of the words that we speak. It
Yes,
might be Bible, it might be scripture, it might be true, but is it necessary?
it's necessary in this
Is
moment.
it necessary for you to say this right now? You know what I'm saying? And
Yes.
so
And
this
it's
is the one I hate. And I'm gonna start using my socks roll up. Look, they're in a better place.
oh
Doug,
no, and a lot of times the response they get is no, the better place is here with me. Yeah,
I want
that's the better place.
it
Yeah,
was best, it was best for them. It was, and that might be true, but that's
I don't hear that.
you're dismissing my feelings right now.
Right.
Right now, I'm mad, I'm angry, I am upset, I'm broken, I'm hurting, I'm on this roller coaster ride, I'm all over the place. And really, this is what you say to me. So with that, I just say the best thing, just show up.
That's it.
Just show up.
That's it.
And the one thing that we don't do well at, me included, is because I don't want to be intrusive. I don't want to impede on people's privacy, but I need to do that, especially in the roles that you and I serve in our spiritual walks.
Yeah.
We need to continue to stay connected to the person. If it's nothing but a text, hey, sis, I'm here.
Right.
Look, want to do lunch?
Right.
Want to do dinner? We need to, on a weekly basis.
Yes.
And, I started saying, I'm not going to stop until you tell me I'm doing too much.
Mhm.
Right. Because, and we have to do that. And so
Right.
we need to, and the thing that your session, your podcast is about, having grace for the person that's grieving. We have to be patient with them. And this is what we have to do for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves.
Yes. And
We have to be honest with,
yes. Yes.
sis,
Yes.
I can't do this, but I can do that.
Right.
And I've gotten to the point to where I'm just going to tell you, I'm 62 now. I probably could have done that when I was 42, but
Right.
but I can do this, but I can offer something else. We really have to be adamant about, we have to be intentional about, to use a better word, about taking care of ourselves, because supporting people who are grieving, it can be emotionally taxing.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we have to be sure to prioritize our own self-care,
Yes.
and to make sure that we're in a good place.
And something you said, the check-in text message.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of people get in their feels when someone is grieving and they text them, but the person doesn't text back.
Mhm.
And so they become angry. Well, this person is doing the best that they can, and I've gone through situations and seasons in my life where it feels good for someone to reach out and shoot me that text, but it seems like such a burden and such a chore for me to text back because I
Yes.
don't. It's like, and I will let them know. I let the people close to me know, like, if I don't text back, don't take it to
Personal.
offense to it, because for me to even have to muster up something at that moment to even text back is like more taxing on me than if they just left me alone.
And I love that you said, and I give them an out.
Yeah.
I'm just texting to check on you. You don't have to text back. I'm
Right.
just here if you need me.
Yes.
And if you
Yes.
just say need, I'm on my way.
Right.
So what we have to do, and we have to be cognizant of that. We can't expect people who are grieving to respond normally,
Right.
because right now they're not normal. They're
Right.
going through a grieving process. I love that. Yeah.
Right.
And
Yes. And for people to know that you don't have to have the perfect words, and you don't have to have so much. I don't know how we I can't drive that home enough, because it's every
yeah.
time I hear all this crazy stuff being said to people, when they're grieving, and it's okay to say, I don't have the right words, but I'm here for you.
Yes.
I don't know what to say in this moment, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. It's okay to say that, you
And
know?
can I tell you, to say that to a griever is one of the most comforting things that you can say to them, because all we really want when we're hurting is just for you to be present in the moment,
Mm,
because we don't want to talk. We
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
We really don't want to talk. Now there are some grievers that you know this thing. I hate it when people say she act like her mama didn't die. She just talking and jip. No, this person. Have you seen that, Christy?
right,
No, this person, the way they're processing the grief,
yeah,
and we are so judgmental, and
yes,
so, because everybody, and we've said it, everybody grieves differently.
yes,
Some people are quiet, some people are loud and obnoxious. We have to be okay with that.
yes.
And so we have to just, hey, this is how he or she is grieving. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, because you have some family members who get mad at other family members because after a death or something, they go away, for a little bit to try to,
Mhm.
decompress, or they take a vacation, or some of those things, and it's like they're grieving the way that they need to. Just
Yeah.
because you choose to stay at home in the bed and they choose to go and sit on a beach and just, look out at the ocean, that doesn't make them any worse than you. It doesn't make you better because you're staying at home doing nothing. And
Sitting.
yes, and so I think that it's important for people to understand everybody grieves in their own way. Everybody deals with things in their own way, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And to also let people know who are supporting someone who's grieving, after you've had these conversations or you've been in the presence of someone who's heavily grieving, take time to decompress for yourself.
Yes.
Go
Yes.
and pray, or go and journal, or go and do what you need to do to kind of decompress from carrying that emotional load, that you've just, well, not carried their emotional load, but that you've had that emotional encounter. And so, because sometimes it can be heavy, and if you don't take the time to rid yourself of what the encounter just happened there, then things can begin to stack up on you and become too much for you as well.
And every day, not so much in the last few weeks because it's been my schedule has been different, but my brother and I, every day we get on the bicycle trail, because I see an average of 8 clients per day. So we meet in the bicycle trail and we ride 13 miles. I listen to the birds. I enjoy watching the squirrels. Sometimes we'll walk, and I just enjoy nature. That's my way of unpacking the load that has been pressed upon me, because Christy, the work that we do is not for the weak at
Not
heart.
at all.
And so if we don't do, or if we're not intentional, even for pastors, and spiritual leaders, if you are not intentional about just doing something for self-care,
Yeah.
um, you will, yeah, you'll break down. So yeah,
Yes,
that's one of the things that I do on a daily basis.
me too. I can't. It's, I'm gonna have to. I wanted to do it this morning, but I didn't have time because that's like that's how I kickstart my day. Um,
Yeah,
and I want other people to know as well when you're supporting someone who is going through grief is that you are a support. You're not their savior.
absolutely.
You know, you can encourage them to seek professional help. It's okay to send them to a pastor. It's okay to say, I don't know everything that needs to be done, or I don't really know how to do. It's okay to say you don't know, and to offer resources to people, or try to help them to find some resource and support instead of shouldering that and thinking that it's your responsibility solely to do this, because it takes a village. Like they say, it takes a village. It takes a village, and it's okay to know what our role is in supporting someone who's grieving, rather than thinking that we have to be the be all end all for them in
Absolutely.
the situation. So I definitely wanted to say that as well. And again, like you said earlier, we gotta give grace to people who are grieving. We got to give grace to ourselves when we're grieving, no matter what type of grief we're dealing with. But be patient with ourselves and go through the process. And because healing can be messy,
Yeah.
but grace is what holds that. Is the glue that holds that together. You can walk beside somebody in the valley of grief without laying down in it. You
I
you
love it.
you can do that. And so loving other people through their loss doesn't mean losing yourself. It just means you're learning to love with grace, just
Yeah.
like God loves us. And so I want, before we close, I want you to tell people how they can get in contact with y'all. Contact Pastor Sheila Willis, licensed professional counselor, and she's a clergyman. So you get the best of both worlds. She's passionate about grief. So if you or someone you know needs grief counseling, how can they contact you, woman of God?
I have a website. I believe it's like Sheila J. Willis. I will go in and tag your live with that information because I don't know what the website is,
Right.
but you can contact me through my website. You can reach out to me and I will definitely give you a call back. You can reach me at 903-471-8148. And I want to say, Chrissy, thank you so much for having me today. This has been absolutely great, and it's been informative for me as well to hear you share. So thank you so much. I have really enjoyed being here, and thank you so much for trusting me to share with your audience.
Yes, ma'am. It's been amazing. I
Yeah.
gleaned a lot from you as well. So I'm thankful and I'm grateful for you accepting this invitation. And we had a lot of comments coming through. I'm new to this podcast, so I'm trying to get it. I'm gonna get to a point to where I can really interact with them. But the comments have been showing up on the screen. So I want to thank all the listeners, all the people who have tuned in, and I want to say to all of you who are dealing with grief, give yourself the gift of honesty and let yourself feel whatever it is that you're feeling, and know that you're worthy of the grace to heal, however
Yeah.
long that this takes. And I also want to say that, like, if this episode, which I know it touched so many, because I think we got like 40 comments, right now.
Wonderful.
Yes, it's they've been in there, and people are saying this is good information. So I'm so glad that we did this, especially with May being Mental Health Awareness Month. So,
Yes.
but for me, every month is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mhm.
But I'm so glad that we did this, and I want to say to our listeners, if this episode, if it touched your heart, please share it. You can subscribe to the YouTube channels. You can subscribe to the Empower Her Experience page, and continue this journey with us. But I thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you again, for Pastor Willis, for joining me and sharing your wisdom and your wealth of knowledge on today. And so until next time, everyone, remember, even when you're grieving, you are still powerful. You are still called. You are still her. So be amazing today. And thanks for tuning in. We will see you next Friday, 9 a.m. Have a blessed
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.